Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Thunder Dragon, a 1991 arcade classic. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer NMK and published by Tecmo, Thunder Dragon released to arcades in 1991. Now, courtesy of Hamster, it's available as an arcade archive title for the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 4. This is one that it's a fun shoot 'em up that I couldn't find much information on, so it seems a little on the obscure side. I did enjoy it, but it's not really one that I could recommend for people who aren't really fans of those early 90s arcade shoot 'em ups. That said, feel free to watch the gameplay and make that decision based off of what you see. So, entering credits into the machine, the actual start screen here is relatively plain, but there is some nice pixel art once you get into the game itself. Starting the game, we launch in these helicopters that are like the GH-68 Thunder Dragon. So I gotta say, when I initially saw the screenshots of this, the helicopters, which they aren't really helicopters, they don't have like rotors, but they reminded me of more of like a whale or some sort of like space fish, I guess. That was what I initially saw. And I was actually kind of excited about like playing something that might have been something more along those lines, or maybe even more like a dragon. Just like my initial thoughts on it. So Thunder Dragon is a typical vertical scrolling shoot 'em up, and it kind of has a bullet hell feel to it, especially as we get later into the game itself. Of course, it is possible to play the game 2 players simultaneous, and as far as the controls, it's relatively basic. You have the ability to shoot, and you also have a bomb, and that's basically it. There are 4 possible weapon upgrades you can obtain, and the way those weapon upgrades work is actually a little interesting. So there are 2 types of weapon power-ups. There's the one that cycles between 1 and 2, 1 being your wide shot, 2 being your Vulcan, and then the one that cycles between 3 and 4, 3 being reflect, which is a laser that reflects around the screen, and 4 being the missile, which is my favorite as it's very powerful. However, the one problem the laser has is it tends to be a little on the... or not the laser. The problem that the missile has is it tends to be difficult to aim your shots, as it has kind of a delay. It's powerful, but that power comes at the cost of having to really work on how you're going to hit the enemy. Anyway, there are a few other power-ups that we can obtain. Those other power-ups happen to be bombs, stars, which if we collect 5 stars, which will show up on the ground if we shoot certain areas of the stage. If we collect 5 stars like that one there I just picked up, we'll get a bomb power-up. Then there's also 1-ups, and there's a rare power-up you can obtain that will give you full power. And that's actually something that's very important, as getting to full power just from picking up power-ups can take quite a bit of work. The amount of levels that there are for the weapons is really up there. I'm not 100% sure how much it is. I think it's like 10 power-ups to get to max power, and when you're destroyed, you're taken back down to 0. Fortunately, any loss of life does result in a couple power-ups being dropped from the top of the screen, so it's not a complete reset, but it can be devastating if you happen to be at full power. The game itself has a total of 8 stages, and then you'll start a second loop after you complete the game itself. And from the gameplay, the first couple stages are relatively simple. In fact, as you can see here, we're basically crushing the first couple stages and their bosses. But once we get to some of the later stages, the game really becomes like this massive slugfest where you're just trying to battle through this these massive waves of enemies that will just eat your quarters up if you were playing in an arcade. So, of course, this being an arcade archive title, you're not going to be spending quarters, which is definitely preferable, but the gameplay loop that's present there still exists. And that's basically what we have here for Thunder Dragon. A relatively straightforward, fun, but at the end of the day, like, it's not a shoot 'em up that is without its flaws. The bombs are like satisfying though. There's some interesting story here. So it takes place in the 22nd century, where Earth has become so polluted that humanity has to focus on basically leaving the planet. But there's this group of mad scientists that's like, no, we would rather like take control of the automated weapons that humanity has developed and like kill all intelligent life instead. Makes sense. So the way that we are going to battle back against these automated weapons that the mad scientists have taken over is by using ancient manned helicopter that was found inside, get this, a military museum in Chicago. I appreciate having that little bit of extra information about the whole plot of the game itself. But it's, well, I guess settings are one thing, but it does have a futuristic setting, and I do appreciate how a lot of the enemies that we're fighting are man mechs, either on the ground or flying. Just the enemy design and the pixel art itself is something I do appreciate. As far as the minus flavors are concerned in this game, so you haven't necessarily seen it up to this point, but the boss fights start to feel a little dry as we move through the game itself. There are a couple bosses that are unique, but for the most part, we'll start seeing the same bosses that we've fought used as in-stage enemies. Used as in-stage enemies, and kind of cheapening the feel of the bosses themselves. Then there's also just the fact that the game itself is a quarter juggler. You'll be using lots of continues just to progress through the insane bullet hell levels of difficulty you get towards the last few stages of the game, and the second loop as well. And the power-ups. So one thing you might not have noticed about the power-ups, but you have the two power-ups that just cycle between power-up 1 and 2 and power-up 3 and 4. But those power-ups, based off of the enemy patterns, can be really hard to pick up when you want to pick them up. So it's difficult to stay on a particular weapon if you have, say, a desire to stay on weapon 1, the wide. It's hard to keep that weapon, so you can move on to weapon 2 by mistake. And really, this game becomes more enjoyable when you just accept the fact that you're not going to always be in control of the weapon that you have currently equipped. But as far as the plus flavors, I do quite like the pixel art and the design of the enemies, the ships, and even the between stages eye-catch cutscenes that are there. There's just a little bit of nice pixel art that's present there. And then it does have that nice classic early 90s arcade feel. So, if that's the kind of game that you're interested in, then yeah, this one might be worth checking out. But otherwise, it's probably one that you'll be alright not taking a chance to play. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.